Hello and welcome to this lesson about an introduction to exponents. The learning target for this video is evaluating exponents. So first, let's start off with the core idea with exponents. And the core idea here is that exponents are repeated multiplication. And so the sooner we understand that, the easier all this becomes. Okay? So for example, if we were to say something like 2 to the 5th, our 5 here is the exponent, and what this is saying is that we're going to take this 2 and we're going to multiply it by itself 5 times. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Each time there's a little multiplication sign in between them. And so as long as we understand that exponents are a shorthand for repeated multiplication, it makes evaluating them and then later on when you have to do fancier things with them a lot easier. Now, let's get into the terminology here. So we just looked at something like 2 to the 5th. Well, there are some things that we need to be familiar with. The 2, that is what we would call the base. The 5, that's called the exponent. And the exponent, the way it's written, it's got to be a small number kind of hovering above the other number. And again, what this tells us is how many times we're multiplying the base over. Now, the whole thing is considered the power. All right, and if you want to, you could actually crunch the numbers and go 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. In this case, that equals 32, and you could also call that the power as well. But yeah, these are some of the basic terminology pieces that we need to know. We need to know what the base is. That's whatever the big number is. The exponent is the small number, and then the power is the whole thing, whether it's multiplied out or written as an exponent. Now, some other things we need to talk about is exponent versus factor, or actually maybe not, sorry, I take that back, not exponent, power versus factor form. All right, so if we take something like 2 to the 5th, that's in sort of the exponent or the power form where you have it written in shorthand. However, if we want to, we could say that that is equal to, and we can write out all those 2's like we've been doing. This is factor form. And if we think about that word factor, what it means, this should make perfect sense because factor is a building block of multiplication. And that's what all these 2's are. These are the individual building blocks of 2 to the 5th. And now if we were to do something like 3 to the 4th, that becomes 3 times 3 times 3 times 3. We're multiplying 3 4 times. And so sometimes you may be asked to sort of like go between both of them. So like rewrite all these 3's as 3 to the 4th. So you might have to write it like that, or you might have to go that way. I want to make sure that you're familiar with it. All right, finally, let's talk about evaluating. And this all goes back to the core idea. All right, these are repeated multiplication. And as long as we keep that in the back of our mind, we should be successful. Now, if you see that word evaluate, that means you actually need to crunch the numbers. Okay, so if we were to do something like 5 to the 3rd, that means you need to go 5 times 5 times 5. Well, 5 times 5 is 25, and then we'll times it by 5 again, and that gets us 125. And so that's how we would evaluate it. Now notice how for evaluating, I go from the exponent form to the factor form. It just kind of helps me keep track of all the numbers. All right, and so if I were to do something like 8 squared, I'm going to go 8 times 8, which is 64. Now, this shouldn't be that tricky for you. All right, this should be somewhat familiar and you kind of get. Where it gets a little more complicated is when I mess with things a little bit. So let's say I now go with 1/4 squared. Well, again, we have to go back to our core idea. Exponents are repeated multiplication. So all this is, even though it looks kind of weird, is it's 1/4 times 1/4. And now we're just multiplying fractions. So multiply the numerators together. That's 1 times 1, which is 1. And then the denominators together, 4 times 4, 16. There's our answer. Or I could give you a decimal. I could go with 1.2 squared. Well, again, we put it in factored form. That is 1.2 times 1.2. And so we can crunch our numbers off to the side. Essentially, this is 12 times 12, which is 144. But then we'll have two decimal spots, so we need to bump it over, the decimal over two spots to the left. And that gives us 1.44. And so this is where it might be a little bit new for you. You probably get how to do that. 5 cubed, or 5 to the third, 8 squared, 8 to the second power. But if we were to do 1/4 to the second power, or 1.2 to the second power, the process is the same, and it all hinges on the core idea. All right? Where we're writing it out. And another reason why I love to stress this core idea, because the biggest mistake I see, and I have to say it, 2 to the third does not equal 6. What people are doing in that case is they see a 2 and a 3, they get that exponents require some sort of multiplication, and they try multiplying these two together. That's not how it works. That's why I like to really stress that idea of writing it all out. 2 times 2 times 2. When you multiply that out, you will clearly see it's not 6, it's 8. So that's pretty much it for the basics of exponents. Good luck with your homework or practice, and let me know if you have any questions.